Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Nerdcast. Here we are again. We've got, a week and a half until a baseball to be played. I mean, we're right at the stretch run here. So we're going to go through Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt here. We're going to go through and try to figure out and make sense of all these crazy games that we saw this weekend, because we definitely had some changes. I think we're going to have a much different feel this week. Keep in mind, this is being recorded before the games of Tuesday, and we are looking ahead, right? We're making some projections on how teams are going to finish, not only in next week's series, but also in the conference tournaments. The other thing to point out is that we're going to agree and we're going to disagree, and we're going to part as friends, we hope. But it's getting to the time when we're going to have to make some really difficult decisions. So it's going to be some fun potting for the next hour or so. The other part of this is that at the top of the field, LSU has been dominant for much of the year, and they lost 2 series in a row. What do you do with a team like that, right? They've been phenomenal up until really these last 2 weeks, and they've showed some vulnerability heading down the stretch. So now they're not in the top. They're certainly not in the top spot. We'll see how far we drop them. But Wake Forest, who was our number 1 team, a week ago, looking pretty. I feel like that they're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, number 2 in the RPI, running away with the ACC. Haven't lost a weekend all year long. Kind of an easy choice here for number 1 national seed.
Yeah, agree. So now it gets more interesting. To me, it's some SEC teams to consider.
Yep.
Next, it's Arkansas, it's Florida, and it's LSU. Those are the 3 to compare and contrast coming up. I think some numbers to focus on: top 25, Arkansas 12-4, Florida 11-7, LSU 11-6. Okay, so those are pretty comparable, and those, other than Duke, they really dwarf. Duke's at 11-7. They really dwarf kind of everybody else in this discussion from a top 25 standpoint. So, I mean, where do you guys? What's your gut tell you on one? Not only where they are now, but looking ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I like Arkansas here. I just think right now, the season that they've had to be 19-8, they are first place in the SEC overall race by a game.
Game and a half. They're a game and a half ahead of LSU in the West.
Right, but as far as Florida, I think they're a game ahead of Florida, the SEC East leader. So the overall standings, they're winning, and now they're at Vanderbilt this weekend. Vanderbilt looked terrible this past weekend, and they're not healthy on the mound. So I kind of like Arkansas's chances on the road there, frankly. I got the Hogs here.
Yeah, I do too. That's my next team. So then you got Florida and LSU. Is there anyone else you want to talk about yet? For me, these are the next 2.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you could talk about at some point. I think it's still probably too early for Stanford, just because that RPI is still 15, but they're the class of the West, and so they need to be in the discussion here somewhere, but probably behind Florida and LSU for me.
I mean, the problem with Stanford is that they haven't played a top 25 RPI game yet.
Yeah.
So when you're comparing it with these teams that, I mean, you got high teens of our top 25 RPI games, it's tough to really draw a comparison and do an effective evaluation. So if you look at these 2, I mean, I think the difference is probably this, strength of schedule. You look at non-conference strength of schedule, Florida's at 62, while LSU's at 196. If you're trying to break a tie, because the rest of it looked pretty similar, guys. I think the only difference would be, LSU going to Georgia and, Florida going to Kentucky. I do think that, LSU has a little bit easier route, but of course LSU just lost at home to Mississippi State, so nothing's easy.
Yeah. I mean, and LSU clearly our concerns about their pitching have caught up with them. Whereas it kind of feels like Florida's trending the opposite way. Their pitching has really come together.
1 week,
yes, it is just 1 week. Great point. I shouldn't read too much into it, but I feel like their bullpen had been coming together.
Yeah,
that has been coming. Now the 1 week thing is Jack Caglione looking like a superstar on Sunday. That's something I'd like to see him sustain that. But boy, it was a good look. But right now they feel like they're in much better shape on the mound than LSU is. So I think I actually lean Florida here.
Yeah, that's what I did. I went Florida 3 and LSU 4.
You too, Kendall?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, we'll see if Florida can be consistent on the mound, but yeah, like LSU's in rough shape on the mound right now.
Yep. And then I think I actually like Stanford 5, like we had them last week.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I had Stanford 5. And then the next teams to consider for me, Clemson, and how about that? West Virginia and Vanderbilt.
Yep. And I think I might go West Virginia 6, just like that, kind of a similar profile to Stanford. Both of them, winning their leagues pretty handily. RPI is similar, like 15 and 17. I mean, heck, West Virginia's 39 and 13. I mean, that's it's pretty loud for a Big 12 team in the regular season with a week to go.
Yeah, 11 and 5 against top 50.
Yep. So I think I would have West Virginia 6.
Okay.
And then you mentioned Clemson and Vanderbilt.
So the other teams to think about here would be Coastal, would be South Carolina, would be Kentucky, Virginia, Duke, Miami. That's probably it at this point.
I think Clemson has separated itself from the rest of that ACC pack right now. I mean, they're 17 and 10 in the league with a number 8 RPI, and they've won 6 straight series or whatever it is, 6 or 7. They got North Carolina at home this weekend. They've played Coastal Carolina twice and I believe waxed them both times. So, for me, they have a clear edge over Coastal. I think it's Clemson.
Yeah, I agree.
Could even make a case for them as high as 5 here.
Yeah, I would have them behind the 2 conference champions.
Yep, I would agree. And so then, number 8.
Yeah, so it's all those teams we talked about. It's how concerned are you with Vandy? Okay, are they still a top 8? And even after they lose to Arkansas, which if we're projecting, that would be their 3rd consecutive series loss. But they're really good at home. I mean, they're 11 and 1 in SEC home games, and it is hard. I don't know if you guys caught that in the dish this week. I mean, nobody is really winning on the road in the league.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's rare. You might beat Ole Miss or Mississippi State, but or maybe Missouri, but other than that, you're not. And it's so it's kind of one of these things that gives me pause when I think, well, I don't want to shovel dirt on Vandy yet because, one, we don't know the health of the rotation, and they've just been good enough in other areas to win games at home, even against an Arkansas team that, I mean, frankly, is probably playing as good as anybody in the non-Wake Forest division, right?
Yeah. So you're right, but I certainly would have Vanderbilt ahead of South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina is a factor right now for the top 8.
They would easily be ahead of Kentucky for me.
Yeah, agreed.
They're 2 full games ahead in the conference standings, and they have the head-to-head.
They swept them.
Not only that, but they swept them. I mean,
you
can't put them ahead of Vanderbilt.
So the only other candidates here, I guess, would be Coastal,
would be an ACC team,
or an ACC team. Yeah, like is there an ACC team that could jump up? I mean, somebody could jump up, but I don't think anyone's there now. Like, what if Miami wins this series against Duke at home? To get to 18 and 12 in the ACC, that RPI would jump. Miami currently, where are they in the RPI? They're 19th. 19. So I guess they have to win out just to finish in the top 16. So they're probably not going to have a top 10 RPI heading into the conference tournament. Now they could win some games in the conference tournament to get up there, but they're probably going to have to make a run in the conference tournament. So I don't think there is another ACC team. I think it's Vanderbilt.
I think it's Vandy. Yeah.
Yep. And even if they lose this series, let's say they lose 2 out of 3 at home, they still get to 18 and 12 in the SEC. I mean, that's pretty top 8-ish.
Yeah. Especially, they'd certainly have a shot. Someone would have to come take it from them. I think would be a good way to put it.
I mean, we should talk about Virginia as well in this mix. It's kind of middle range of the top 16. All of a sudden, they're playing better. They did sweep a really struggling Louisville team. before that they had lost, what do we say, 4 of their last 5 series, but they have a head-to-head sweep over Miami. So and they're ahead of Miami in the standings and the RPI. So I do well. They're tied with Miami in the standings, but ahead in the RPI by 10 spots. Virginia's number 9. So for me, they're the next ACC team now.
Okay.
Which is a big jump because they were outside our top 16 last week, but then they swept Louisville and they finished at Georgia Tech. Tech's playing better, but I still like UVA's chances there.
Okay. You want to go with them at 9?
I think I would be inclined to do that unless you want to put Coastal here, but I think I like Virginia.
What about Kentucky?
Kentucky's the other one.
So Kentucky's the other team to think about. Number 1 RPI. They have 19 top 50 wins. That's a lot.
Should they be ahead of? How we already said they have to be behind Vanderbilt for the reasons we said.
Yeah, they can be ahead of.
I think. Yeah. I kind of like Virginia and Kentucky here.
Yeah, I do too.
In that order, yeah.
Yep, and then South Carolina.
Virginia, Kentucky.
So one of the things to mention about South Carolina, all right, we talk about how big these conferences are and unbalanced schedules. They have played all of the good teams in the West, okay? They played LSU, they played Arkansas, they played Auburn. You only get to play 3, and they played arguably three of the top ones. It's a challenging schedule, okay, as far as it's the most challenging schedule that an SEC team played in intra-conference. So whether the committee picks up on that, maybe they do now, but it's part of that math when you're trying to evaluate these teams.
I do like the 18 and 12 top 50 as well. 15 and 11 in the league. It's comparable to Kentucky. Kentucky's 15 and 12. Gamecocks have Tennessee at home. Obviously a big series.
Huge.
If we think, and Tennessee has not won a series on the road.
Correct.
So if we think South Carolina holds serve, wins 2 out of 3, gets to 17 and 12 in the league, probably enough to slot in right about here.
Yeah, and I would obviously have them behind Kentucky based on what happened on the field.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm with you there. Kentucky 11, Kentucky 10, South CAC 11.
Yep.
Coastal?
And then let's talk about Coastal. Yeah, I think this is the spot for them. And they also close at home with Marshall, so you have to like their chances to keep those winning ways.
Yeah, and they have the tiebreaker over Southern Miss in the Sun Belt regular. They're tied currently in the standings, but Coastal won the head-to-head there.
Yep. So then let's talk ACC because I think it's Miami and Duke, maybe Boston College here. Yeah, one of those or some of those are in this next group.
Yep. So I like Miami's chances at home against Duke this weekend. So for me, they would be ahead of Duke in the pecking order, even though Duke has the better RPI right now. They're 12th. Miami's 19. Then in between those two, you've got Boston College, who's 14. BC just 14 and 13 in the league. So they're a little behind. They're two games back in the loss column behind Duke and Miami. But BC has a winnable home series, you would think, this weekend against Notre Dame. So favorable matchup there. If you project them to win at least 2 out of 3 to get to 16 and 14, is that enough? Maybe they need to sweep it.
It depends on what others do. Yeah. Right. They're going to be right on that bubble.
Yep. But I would say Miami. The pecking order for these 3 guys, I guess it's Miami. Is it Miami, Duke, BC? Or I think it probably is.
That's what I had.
Yep. Because even if Duke loses 2 out of 3 and they still finish 16 and 13, that probably puts them ahead of BC.
The tournament's going to matter.
Right? Yep.
So the other teams to consider here, Oklahoma State.
Sorry, one more thing. And Duke does have a road series win at BC.
Road series too. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Alabama.
So Oklahoma State, Indiana State, Dallas Baptist. I mean, even East Carolina, certainly if they win the league, would be in their running there. And even Campbell has crept back up to get pretty close. And then you got UConn, who's out there, whose RPI fell. But all of those, to me, they're outside the power conferences, but there's a path for all of those to get in there and grab one of those final spots.
I want to talk about Oregon State because they're done with Pac-12 play now. They're 18 and 12. They're the clear number 2 team in the whole West pecking order. The RPI isn't there; it's 27. However, we've seen it before. Teams in the pack finish high in their standings like that, around 30 in the RPI mark. I mean, we have seen it before.
Yeah,
those are the teams that can jump up and with RPIs that aren't in the usual range and get one, especially as just the second team in the West. Like there's you feel like generally speaking, the committee does like to have a second regional out there.
They did it in 19. They were 22. Okay, so that's not 30.
Right.
And after playing Western Carolina, who knows where it'll be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in Fullerton, they were 25 in 2015.
UCLA one year was lower.
They won the league, but they were second, I think, but they were 30, 34, or something like that. Anyway, we're getting older, but that's been quite a while now.
I guess it has.
And a non-top 16 era too.
Yeah. So I do think that there's certainly a case, and as we're slotting teams to fields, teams to locations, it certainly helps to have this second West Coast site.
Helps with
shouldn't
programming.
matter, but it's a factor in their favor.
I think also, I mean, I just think that going 18 and 12 in the pack, which could be a 6-bid league, I think that carries weight. I think that matters. That particular number, hitting that number and being the clear number 2 team in the West, for me, that holds some weight. And I recognize that some of the other metrics aren't there, but they've played great, for an extended period of time now. And it just feels like one of those years where maybe the committee goes beyond the RPI. And listen, it probably will come down to the Pac-12 tournament. The news report says they can finish inside the top 32 by winning their last 4 games. So they'd have to sweep Western Carolina. We think they will do that. Mm-hmm. But, you probably head into the conference tournament around 30. And then, you got a chance to make some more moves in the RPI. So if they can get into the mid-20s with an 18 and 12 regular season record in the pack, I kind of like their chances.
Then they're in the conversation. 6 and 5 against top 50 is hard, though. I mean, it's the bulk of their games are between 51 and 100. Okay, 19 games, they're 13 and 6.
Right.
So it's we can revisit the conversation about why some of the West Coast teams don't have great RPIs, but I do think that there is some leeway. It's just, honestly, it's going to depend on who your other contenders are to find out how much. Okay.
And so, for instance, a team like Dallas Baptist, that I also agree should be very much in this conversation, 16th in the RPI, they're 11 spots ahead of Oregon State right now, but they're just 2 and 5 top 50.
Yeah.
Like, is that a disqualification? I mean, I like the fact that they're dominating their league. They just swept UTSA. They're 23 and 4. They're already at 40 and 12. They've already reached the 40 win mark for DBU. That's all impressive. But if we're saying that Oregon State's top 50 mark isn't great, like 2 and 5 for DBU feels like, is that a disqualifier?
Yeah. I mean, I pulled numbers this morning. They're 2 and 7.
Oof.
If you look at what we had on the nitty gritty this morning. Yeah. So, and Indiana State's the same deal, 2 and 9, top 50. Right. So it's what do you value? Do you look at how well you're doing in your conference versus some of these other metrics? Where do you fall? And I kind of cut Kendall off when he was bringing up Alabama, because there's some SEC other contenders too that we need to talk about. There's Alabama, there's Auburn, and there's even Tennessee. There's a path for them to get back in this too. Yeah. They're actually ahead of Alabama in the standings. So
I think Tennessee and Auburn are both 14 and 13 as we head into the final weekend. So Tennessee's on the road, as we've talked about, at Tennessee, at South Carolina rather, which not an easy path. But if they win it,
then if they win it, then they're going into the SEC tournament with 16 wins. Yep. And we have had, in the last 10 years, we've had 3 SEC teams out of the, I think it's 12, who have hosted with 16 wins. So it does happen. It doesn't happen a lot. Usually you have in fact, I've got it here. Usually you have a really high RPI, or you're like Ole Miss let's see, where is it? Ole Miss in 2019 and you make it all the way to the SEC tournament final, and you host with an RPI of 22.
Wow, how about that?
16 wins and a 22, and they hosted.
Yeah, Florida was 500 last year, and then
so
went on that
far,
run in Hoover.
Great point. Same concept. They had 15 wins. They had a better RPI. It was 12, but they won 4 games, lost in the final, just like the Ole Miss example. So I think if you're Auburn, if you're Tennessee, if you're Alabama, that's the path. You need to try to get to that 16 wins, which it's all in play for those 3 teams, but that's not enough.
Right.
You're going to have to hang around in Hoover. And how much? Maybe 4 wins isn't the magic number. Maybe this year it's 3, maybe it's 2. Who knows, right? Every year is a little bit different. But you're not going to be able to go lose that opening game and host.
What I kind of feel like is the committee takes whichever one of those 3 teams gets deep in the tournament. Assuming they all take care of business this weekend.
Right.
So Auburn's got a very friendly series against Missouri at home.
Yep.
Yeah. Bama has Ole Miss.
Yeah.
At home.
Yep. So and Bama's
Tennessee's
currently
at South Carolina.
So the most likely is, Auburn's a game ahead, so they only have to win 2 games to get to 16.
Right.
If you project them to sweep, they're at 17, and the math changes completely. Okay.
Yep.
So 17 win SEC teams. You remember last year Auburn hosted at 16 and 13. Okay, with an RPI in the mid-teens. So if they get to 17, then you're looking at if you have 17 SEC wins and a teens RPI, you host from the SEC.
Okay.
So
currently they're 20th, by the way. So they're kind of running that edge.
So the question becomes: do we think they're going to sweep Missouri? I kind of do.
I think that the safe bet is 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
They could sweep though. Wouldn't surprise me. But I don't think betting on that is the play.
So and Missouri's playing better. They're certainly swinging the bats well.
Yeah.
I don't know how well they'll pitch against Auburn's lineup, but that could be a fun series with lots of runs scored. But the other thing is, they don't have to sweep it. If they just win 2 out of 3, there's still the make the run in Hoover play. The same thing Alabama would have to do and Tennessee would have to do. Of course, Tennessee could sweep South Carolina. I doubt it, especially on the road. Tennessee hasn't, they haven't done a whole lot on the road. So I wouldn't project that at all.
Yep. And then you mentioned before, I'll just throw these other candidates into the discussion. You mentioned UConn, and then Southern Miss is kind of in a similar boat with a 28 RPI currently, UConn 25 RPI. If Southern Miss wins the Sun Belt, again, they're tied with Coastal currently. Let's say they win the regular season and that RPI can climb a little bit. I mean, like they've got Louisiana at home this weekend. There's not going to be a path for them to get into the top 16, but I mean, if they let's say they sweep this weekend and they're kind of like they finish in the mid-20s heading in the conference tournament, they got a chance. I mean, it's with the regular season conference title.
Well, they play the Raging Cajuns this weekend, so I mean it's a good opponent. You'll get some RPI love from that, plus some just credibility, old school credibility from that series. Last year they were 17, and they were the 12 seed, 11 seed, something like that. So they're certainly in play. I do think they need to win the league, and Coastal has a much easier path. But if they were, quote, tied for the league, even without the tiebreaker, and then won the Sun Belt tournament, then there's another path.
Yep. So out of this group, we've got a lot of teams here, actually.
Yeah.
Miami, Duke, BC from the ACC. You've got Auburn, Bama, Tennessee.
Yep.
You've got your mid-majors here, DBU, East Carolina, Indiana State, UConn, Southern Miss, and then you've got Oklahoma State, and Oregon State, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
For really, 4 spots left?
Yeah. A lot to be determined in the last few weeks. Out of that group, I feel like Miami is one I feel probably, they're 16-11 in the ACC with a home series against Duke. I like their chances at home. It's not a slam dunk, but I like their chances at home. If they win that series to get to 18-12, I think they host. Okay. And same goes for Duke. If they win their series at Miami,
it's the winner, right? Yeah. We're projecting Miami to win that series. Okay.
I think I would. Just again, home field advantage. Miami's good at home.
Okay.
So would they be the next team then at 13?
Yeah, I can go with that.
I think so.
So then what do you do with Oak State? Okay, so tough series at Oklahoma this weekend. You don't have, honestly, if you only win one of those games, you're probably going to hold serve in the RPI, and then the tournament matters. But if you win two, you're going to get that road bonus, and the RPI is going to climb.
I think I would pick them to win that series. Could go either way, but I think I would take Oklahoma State.
It's a tough one. Oklahoma's playing much better.
So Oklahoma State's currently number 21
mm-hmm.
In the RPI. It's a 7 and 8 top 50. So again, if we're going to talk about Oregon State's top 50 record, at least Oregon State's got a winning record against top 50, but comparable number of games. Both second place in their leagues. Oregon State kind of comfortably second place. Oklahoma State just a game ahead of Texas, Kansas State. I guess actually
So who do you like? I mean, who you've Oklahoma State or Oregon State? I mean,
well, and let me throw another
team 9 spots ahead in the RPI, which Oklahoma State, if they just win one game this weekend, will be more like 13 or 14 spots higher in the RPI. Because Oregon State's definitely dropping.
They're going down, yeah.
But
you're not picking Oregon State because of RPI. You're picking them because of their standing in the league.
And if Oregon State sweeps, I think they don't drop much, like maybe a spot or two, but not much. They still stay probably
three
around
games
30.
though.
Yeah.
They need some Northwest rain.
Washington is the other team that actually should be in this because they're actually in a similar position with Oregon State.
Yeah,
they're actually so. I should backtrack a little bit here because percentage points wise, Washington is actually ahead of Oregon State in the standings. I've been saying Oregon State's number 2 comfortably, and that's not the case. Washington is 16 and 10. Oregon State is 18 and 12. Washington has a home series to finish against Cal this weekend, who is one of the worst teams in the league. And so if they take 2 out of 3, then they're 18 and 11. They actually finish a half game ahead of the Beavers. If they sweep it, then 19 and 10. Comparable RPI. They're number 31 right now. Beavers 27. Washington is the other dark horse in here.
Yeah.
I think it all depends on which one of those two teams goes on a run in the conference tournament.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now, maybe we just kind of wait and see on that, I suppose.
That would be my
I feel like there's going to be a second Pac-12 host, and I feel like it's going to be one of those two teams. But
how do you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it also depends on what happens in these other leagues, too. One of these mid-majors just may go on a run here and get some RPI love and just kind of kick somebody else out.
Right. So we've got 3 spots left. I don't know if we've made any progress.
Okay. So I kind of like rewarding the Big 12.
Yep.
And going Oak State.
Agreed.
Better RPI reality.
They're finally healthy. They're finally healthier.
Yep.
I think they're going to start putting the pieces together a little bit.
And that is a team we had in last week as well, last 2 weeks. So they've kind of been in this range.
Yeah. So then we got 2 spots left. So I think the most likely go here would be one of those Pac-12s. I don't know. You guys tell me which one, because it's not resume. It's based on who's going to do better in the conference tournament, right? So
and they're both playing well.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a head-to-head here? There is. Oregon State won 2 out of 3 against Washington at home.
Okay. So that would probably be the other way. Just watching this play out over time, not as of today, but watching it play out. I agree. I think there'll be a push within the room to spread that out.
Yeah. So I might like another ACC team, like a Duke and Oregon State, or I feel like all those SEC teams need to do a little. They have more work to do than a Duke.
I would. We're going to meet again before the tournament. I think that would be the time to project it. One, you'll know what they did this weekend, and you also see the path. Who they're going to play, and you kind of be, oh yeah, if this falls right. Who's healthy? Because a lot of teams won't throw their top guys in a tournament, right? If everything's locked up.
Yep.
So
yeah,
it's easier to handicap.
Well, one thing that's interesting is as we record this in the middle of the day on Tuesday, Duke is losing to Gardner-Webb 9-3 in the ninth.
Wow.
And the impact games would suggest that Duke would drop to 17 with a loss to Gardner-Webb.
Okay.
And they finish at Miami. I mean, they could end up in the 20s by the end of the week, although the Miami series is going to hurt them.
Yeah, it's on the road. Yeah.
Yeah, they will. All they need to do, the news report said they needed to win 2 out of those last 4 games to stay in the top 16. So if they can, I mean, if they lose 2 out of 3, they're probably still in the top 20. And then you're looking at, they'd be 17 and 13 in the ACC. So what we'd be looking at with a top 20 RPI.
Would you like them more than BC?
I think so, based on
the
fact that they won the road series at BC.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. I mean, there's also the geography factor that goes in BC's favor. And frankly, like the degree of difficulty, to do what BC has done as a team that has to play on the road the first 6 weeks, like maybe that should matter.
Yeah.
The road record is sparkling, as we've talked about plenty of times. They're 18-9 on the road. Like they should get some credit for that. And they do, and the RPI is baked in, but also above and beyond that, I mean, maybe that should be a factor here.
Yeah. If their conference record was a little bit better, that would be an easier sell.
Right. So for them, the key is, I mean, boy, if they can sweep Notre Dame at home.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Because then that would get them to 17 and 13, which, all right, like if they do that, I think they host. 16 and 14, probably not, right?
Probably not. Not without some other factors.
Yeah. And I just feel like all these mid-majors in this discussion are still all just a little light, mostly when it comes to that top 50 metric. It's, the same for DBU and Indiana State and UConn. Southern Miss is a little better shape in that metric, but they're farther back in the RPI. So,
yeah.
Campbell, you mentioned, they're 4-4 against the top 25. Those are also all their top 50 games. So 4-4 top 50 and top 25, 22 in the RPI. They're kind of in that discussion too.
So we've kind of talked our way back into
not
knowing.
Well, I mean, I guess where I come down on it is I probably would go Duke and Oregon State, but I'm curious how you guys feel.
Well, I mean, the Kendall bringing up the current loss, I mean, that we haven't factored in. That might make help.
And Duke, the fact that they stubbed their toe against Georgia Tech at home this past weekend, my faith in them is a little shaken. I didn't really like, and it sounds like maybe there's an issue with Andrew Healy. I don't know if that's accurate or not. It sounded like he, the key starter for them, that they were kind of counting on moving into the rotation, giving him some length. Might be his status might be uncertain.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, we talked about Auburn. If they could sweep Missouri, then there's their spot right here. So you're trying to gauge what's most and least likely, to transpire down these. Do you like Duke winning at Miami, or do you like Auburn sweeping instead of 2 out of 3,
or BC sweeping Notre Dame,
or BC sweeping Notre Dame? Right.
I think it's what's loud to me is the fact that Duke has 5 more top 25 RPI wins than Auburn does.
Yeah,
that's pretty.
That is a good metric. Yeah,
that 11-7 top 25 is pretty good.
Yeah,
so I would have Duke in here for one.
Yeah,
and then, I mean, I don't like their metrics, but DBU is 14 or was it 14 top 100? Yeah, they're 14 and 8 against top 100. I mean, my thing about DBU is they're gonna have a top 16 RPI probably. They're gonna run away with their conference as the conference champion, and they just and the metrics just don't look great.
Yeah.
So to me, if your metrics don't look great, you have to have something to offset that. Like they're running away with the league.
So there's also the option of kind of like we said, the West Coast placeholder. Oregon State would be my vote over Washington, but it's close.
Yeah. I just don't think I don't think in the top 16 era they're putting a number 32 RPI in as a host.
Why does it matter the top 16 era? Because they always picked 16 teams, the 16 best teams. Like, why does it matter that they're ordering them now? I don't know why that's a factor.
Was it what are we on year 3 and they haven't had anybody below 22?
I just think that's maybe the makeup of the committee. I don't think it has to do with the seeding them 1 through 16. Like, to me, it's the process is the same.
Well, I do think you're kind of both right here. I think that because you look at what A&M did last year, heck, they were a national seed at 22.
Right.
So that certainly you're not 1 through 8 there. So you can throw you out. I do think there's some, we'll just say, precedent of selecting teams that are really close to that 1 through 16 cut line RPI.
Yeah.
So A&M's an outlier, and maybe there's another outlier this year, and it comes as a Pac-12 team. You're rewarding the number 2 team in that conference, which I'm probably okay with, right? Because you do have something to offset, an RPI that isn't where it traditionally is.
So if we're projecting Washington to win at least 2 out of 3 against Cal this weekend, which I certainly would at home, they will actually pass Oregon State and be second place in the standings technically by a half game. Now, if they sweep, then it's a game and a half. But like, does that edge in the standings kind of offset the fact that the Beavers won that head-to-head?
It's one factor. They're both factors, right? The head-to-head's a factor. The conference finish is a factor. The RPI is a factor. Who you beat's a factor. Who you lost to is a factor. And I mean, just looking at Washington there, there's not a lot of high-end wins, but they've done really well in the middle.
Boy, 273 non-conference strength of schedule for Washington. Wow. How is that possible?
And Oregon State's 221, so
also
it's
not great.
But 273 is bad. There's only 300 teams.
Yeah. That's shocking. That's shocking. Why is that?
Yeah, I don't know. So I would probably go Oregon State here if we're doing the placeholder thing. That would be my guess. If we're not going that route, I mean, Auburn may have the easiest path, and none of these are easy, but don't misunderstand. But I think there's a better chance of them sweeping Missouri and going in with 17 wins than some of these things happening.
I'm just looking at
wait, who's chairing the committee this year?
Oh yeah, that guy.
When I was trying to look, I'm pretty sure Jen Cohen's still on the committee, isn't she?
Yeah, good point too.
Yeah.
Kendall, I think you might want to check your mic. You sound like there's something going on there. That's a good point. Jen Cohen from Washington is also on the committee, but yeah, this is interesting discussion. So, Mark, I mean, where do you come down now? It sounds like you Auburn, or
no? I'd probably go Oregon State, and then and honestly, it's a Pac-12 runner-up placeholder spot.
Yep.
Because there's not an obvious 16th pick. We have a lot of options, and none of these are wrong. But I do think, some geographic diversity would be a good thing.
Yeah. Well, the only thing about DBU is right now you have no regional in Texas.
Which has happened before, but it's been a while.
It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That also would be a geographic.
Yeah, that would help.
Consideration.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
and they're a conference champ.
Conference champ with a top 16 RPI, just 2-5 top 50. Of course, that's really the only knock. But they're 14-8 top 100, which is comparable. I mean, it's a little behind. Like Oregon State, for instance, top 100 is 19-11. So with a 6-5 top 50, so like those metrics are a little better for the Beavers. But
yeah, I mean that they would be, because Conference USA is what, about number 8 in the conference RPI
in that ballpark.
Yeah, that would be the lowest.
5.
Oh, they're 5.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's
no.
next year.
No, they're 8.
8. Okay, so that would be
Sure
the lowest in quite a while.
Yeah, really. They're 8.
I can go back and look, but that would be the lowest in a while.
And the Missouri Valley, for the record, is 11.
11
for Indiana State. The Big East, of course, for UConn is 12th. And the Big South for Campbell is 16th.
Yeah.
So out of those, obviously DBU winning the number 8 conference carries a little more.
I mean, at the end of the day, like I would actually prefer this group for the runner-up in the Pac-12 to have a host. But I just wonder if they'll do it. I mean, they're just always so RPI heavy on the host selections.
Except for when they're not. I guess it's just
when have they ever been not about that on host selections?
As we talked about. I mean, Mark gave us a couple examples earlier of Pac-12 teams around 30 that have hosted.
Yeah, but what, a decade ago?
What was the most recent one was when?
It was. Let me go back to it. Yeah, I got a lot of tabs.
The thing about A&M as a national seed was they actually won the SEC West.
Yeah.
With 19 league wins.
And, it was a pretty good SEC too. So in 2019 was Oregon State at 22. Okay, so that's not 30. It's 22.
Were they the conference champ?
No, UCLA was a conference champ.
So that's kind of the model. Beaver, I mean, as we've said, they need to win some games in the conference tournament to get into the kind of mid to high 20s at least.
And they were the last. They were 16.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is kind of what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think they're probably going to end up getting edged out at the end of the day, but I'd be fine putting them in there now. Like, what are these SEC teams going to either knock them or knock Duke out?
Could happen.
Like one of Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee is probably going to go on a run in Hoover.
Yeah, it could happen.
I think Alabama, for me, is a team I have a lot of conviction on right now.
Yeah,
sure would be nice if they got Ben Hess back, and it's not looking so promising.
Doesn't sound promising.
And the fact that they're starting this thing at 13 and 14, like they kind of have to sweep. And I don't like betting on a team that's must sweep. I know Ole Miss is having a bad year, but it's one thing to bet on a team to win 2 out of 3. But sweep,
I think we'll be able to have a more informed conversation on this, say Sunday.
Yep. Indeed. Which will be.
And just since we haven't really talked about East Carolina very much, the fact that they're not winning a bad American this year is kind of a disqualifier.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They're a half game behind.
They're only a half game back. I think if they can get, if they can win that regular season championship this weekend and their RPIs and, in the top 16, then I think it might be a separate discussion.
No.
But as of right now, you can't give them a host.
Right.
When they didn't even win a league with the number 95 RPI team leading it.
And they've got a favorable matchup, but so does Houston. Houston's got Cincinnati at home, and Houston's playing well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would bet on Houston there. Okay. So I guess that leaves us with the Beavers or DBU.
I would go OSU or Dallas Baptist. And I honestly have no idea where to go on that one. Like, I have an idea, but like there's not a wrong answer in my opinion.
I vote for Oregon State.
I do too.
Mark this too. Just give us a West placeholder now, and we can make it clear. A caveat here is these teams need to do a little more in the RPI in the conference tournament. This is based on the presumption that Oregon State or Washington will win some games and boost that RPI. So there we have it. That was a long debate on hosts.
Yeah,
but
it's hard this week.
A lot of host contenders.
Mm-hmm.
So changes.
And even and here's the other. Southern Miss. We didn't really talk about much, but I mean Southern Miss. A little bit like Oregon State, they're in a top 5 RPI league. They're tied for first place right now. But they're 28 in the RPI right now.
Yeah.
Next to Oregon State, they swept Dallas Baptist non-conference, so that shouldn't matter. So I mean, I mean, you could honestly argue Southern Miss could be over Oregon State, but I'm okay with Oregon State for now.
Yeah, I just think that you if you're in the West, you can get that RPI leeway a lot more than if you're in the state of Mississippi. Even in a mid-major conference, I just think it's a different reality geographically.
Be aware that former USM athletic director Bill McGillis is also now on the committee.
Yeah, good call. Which maybe that's a boost for South Carolina too. Just a thought.
Yeah.
His son is a Gamecock now.
Yeah.
Changes from last week in Oregon State and Duke, out UConn and BC. I feel like UConn and BC have been in and out from week to week every year. We've had a lot of volatility in the hosts, but I guess maybe that's normal. Guys, let's pivot. Part 2 of the Nerdcast.
Yep.
Conference by conference look at the automatic qualifiers and at-large picture. Starting, of course, with the America East, where we all
it would be Maine.
It's still Maine.
Yeah,
we should haul to these smaller leagues that are pretty obvious.
American Athletic. We're going to haul what.
Go haul Pirate.
Haul Pirate. We're going to stick with East Carolina as our projected, even though they're not winning the regular season, as we mentioned. We'll stick with them as our auto bid. Obviously, this would become a 2-bid league if somebody else wins the conference tournament. To the A10, Davidson was our pick last week and still is 15-5. Got Michael.
Yeah, keep it on the fighting Fritz Homburgs in the tournament though. They're just a half game back.
Yep,
9-1 their last 10.
St. Joe's. ACC. Here we go. We've got already in Wake Forest, Clemson, Virginia, Miami, and Duke as 5 hosts, with BC as the next team.
Goodbye NC State.
Yeah, NC State
and Vatech too. They're out.
So let's see. So last week we had both those teams in, right? We had State. No, just State. We did not have Virginia Tech in.
Right. So Notre Dame would be on the bubble, especially if we're projecting them to lose this weekend.
Georgia Tech is the interesting one for me. So Georgia Tech is now, depending on what you look at, they're around in the low 40s in RPI. They're 12-15 in the league, and they have Virginia at home this week. And if we think they're going to win that series at home, they might get in.
Well, we projected Virginia to host, so I don't think we did, right?
Yeah, I'm not. We exactly. I'm projecting Virginia to win that series, but I mean, if they can win 2 out of 3 to get to 14 wins, I mean, RPI is still kind of borderline for an ACC at-large team.
But they'd have a lot to play for in Durham.
Yep.
So,
Notre Dame, let's say they win 1 out of 3 at BC to get to 15-15. Again, borderline-ish RPI, but at least it's 500 in the league. Like, it would just be a bubble case.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys on NC State being out, of course. They just got swept by North Carolina to fall to 10-16. But worth noting, if they can sweep Pitt to get to 13-16, they're alive.
They got a fighting chance.
They're alive heading into the conference tournament. They would still have a lot of work to do. But for now, I think it obviously North Carolina's in, and then Notre Dame would be bubble in, and I think that's all I've got right now. I want to see more.
Yeah.
I mean, if Georgia Tech wins that series, Virginia, then it's a different discussion. But right now, they're not on the board yet. So
agreed.
Okay. ASUN and the Hokies, by the way, are down to 11-15 in the league with a 55 RPI. I mean, boy, a serious fall from grace for those guys.
And they're at Wake Forest this weekend. So good luck.
Good luck. ASUN, 1-bid league. I say we stick with FGCU, even though Lipscomb is currently ahead in the standings.
Leading
Boston series in North Florida over the weekend.
FGCU did?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. So, I mean, I still believe
I agree.
FGCU, but that's worth noting. Big 12, we've got West Virginia and Oklahoma State in as hosts.
Yep. Then it gets really interesting. After
Texas. I mean, I think Kansas State and Texas Tech would be in for me. They're both tied in the standings. I think Texas Tech for me is still on the good side of the bubble, but I think Oklahoma for me would be on the board.
Yep.
And I think TCU is very likely still out, but they can at least be in the discussion. I think.
Yep.
I think they're definitely probably out though.
And
the problem with TCU is Oklahoma has the head-to-head. There's not enough separating them in the conference standings, and Oklahoma's 14 spots ahead in the RPI over TCU.
Yeah,
that's notable.
Good points.
I mean, we can honestly probably just take TCU off. I mean, there's probably not room for them, is there?
They're probably.
Let's hang out.
Okay.
I did this exercise this morning.
Okay.
So you're saying leave them on, Mark?
Leave them on.
Okay.
Are we alluding to a small bubble?
It's what we in showbiz call a teaser.
I mean, in that case, should we put Georgia Tech on as well? Because for me, they're in a similar situation.
I didn't have room for them.
Okay.
I like how Mark's just cheating. He's just doing his field before we can even talk to him.
I mean, they are at Kansas State. They're at Kansas State this weekend. Personally, I mean, it's a tough series to pick, but I like Kansas State at home.
3D chess over here by Mark Etheridge. That's why he's a Nerdmaster General.
We also, by the way, we also do have Texas in out of this league. I don't know if we mentioned that. So that's 3 in for sure. And then you got Kansas State, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, and TCU all in the bubble. So that's interesting. I guess we can revisit this. But the pecking order for me would be Kansas State first out of that group.
Texas Tech.
I mean, the fact that Texas Tech has made that big RPI jump just by going to West Virginia and losing a series, it's what they needed to do. They're up to 41 now.
Yeah, at least one.
Yep, Oklahoma, and then TCU. I think that's the pecking order.
Yeah, agreed.
Big East is UConn, one bid league. We talked about Xavier last week.
Yeah.
I mean, 3-13 top 50 is just hard for me for a team they're still a half game back in the standings. Theoretically, they could win the regular season title in the Big East, but they've got Georgetown at home this weekend, and UConn has at Creighton. So I don't know. I mean, I'm fine sticking with just UConn here.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. That 3-13 again, top 50, and with a 48 RPI for the Big East. Like if they win the regular season title this weekend, then we can have a different discussion. Big South is Campbell. We'll move it along. One bid league. Keep an eye on the Spartans of USC Upstate in the conference tournament. They're playing well right now. Won 8 of the last 10, 19-5 in the league with a 97 RPI. Not an at-large team, but a dangerous team.
Right.
Big Ten is Indiana and Maryland. I still think Maryland's fine. But now 49 in the RPI. They had 2-2 week and they dropped down into the late 40s. They're still tied for first place in the conference. They've won like 10 straight series. They have the head-to-head tiebreaker over Indiana. So if those two teams finish tied, Maryland gets the regular season title. I know the RPI is bubbly, but I think if they can win the regular season title, and they've got Penn State this weekend on the road, if they win the regular season title, I think they're fine.
Yeah, agree.
Maryland, Indiana, Iowa.
Iowa still have Iowa in.
Yeah, they actually went up 11 spots in the RPI last week.
Up to 30 now, 13-7 in conference. So I know last week we talked about Rutgers some. They're kind of hanging around number 50 in the RPI with a 13-8 league record. At Minnesota to finish, it's not a good team, but also it's going to hurt them in the RPI, you would think.
But the conference record improves.
Conference record improves. RPI probably takes a hit. Minnesota's 15-33. But it's on the road, so I don't know.
I mean, you can put them on the board.
I don't think they're getting in, but we could.
They're kind of in that Georgia Tech category of.
We can keep them just over to the side.
Yeah, I'll make the list of those as we go. Rutgers, Georgia Tech, and Xavier, I believe, would be all in that category. Okay. Big West. Fullerton is still atop the standings by just a half game over UC San Diego, who's not postseason eligible. And then you've got Santa Barbara, 1 game back. Fullerton has the head-to-head. Regular season champ gets the auto bid here. I think we still project the Titans. Is Santa Barbara still safe? I think I have them in right now.
Yeah, I have them in, and then Irvine would be the other team to put on the bubble.
Once again, every week we talk about Irvine and then cut them. But so Santa Barbara, 42 RPI, 16-8 in the league. Irvine is 47 RPI, 13-11 in the league, which is 6th place. Yeah. But they're, what are they, 6-0 against the Pac-12 or something? They've done well in those games. So it's an interesting resume. CAA, last week we projected UNCW as the auto bid and then had Northeastern as an at-large. Now,
UNCW did lose a series over the weekend, but they still have the head-to-head during the regular season.
Right. So it's just a matter of who we think is going to win the conference tournament. And we flip-flopped this repeatedly now.
Just hold what we got.
Just keep UNCW as the auto bid? Okay.
Yep.
Lack of respect for the Huskies, guys.
Yeah. But by the way, Conference USA, we can go ahead and probably take UTSA off the board.
Yeah, so they're down to 61 in the RPI. They just got swept by DBU. I think they're probably done for now, large guys.
For now, yeah. I mean, I didn't see the needs report, but I mean, you're not getting in from Conference USA with a 60 plus RPI, like zero shot.
And they're not going to win the league either. So, Horizon, of course, is Wright State. 5 games ahead of the Norse and the Grizzlies. Ivy League. Are we into the playoffs?
I'll go with
now?
Penn.
Yeah.
You go with Penn?
Well, they have a conference tournament now.
You're right. So 4-team conference tournament.
Yeah.
We had Harvard last week,
Mm-hmm.
but Penn has won 5 straight. They won the regular season. That's over now, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll take
The Quakers.
Penn. And I guess they're hosting too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a change. Penn replaces.
They have a big home field advantage at Mecklejohn Stadium.
It's a fun word to say.
It is.
Mecklejohn.
You know what else is fun to say? Mac.
Yeah, that was put on a T, wasn't it?
That was delightful. Do we have a change here, guys? Are the Griffs?
We might.
So we've had the Ryder Bronx for some time now. Canisius.
Bless you.
Thank you. That's well played. Very clever. Canisius lost 2 out of 3 at Ryder when they played back in April, but Canisius has now passed Ryder by percentage. I take that back. Percentage points. Ryder is still ahead, 13-5.
Yeah, they rode past them.
Yeah, let's just stick with the Bronx. The Bronx split 2 games at Duke last week, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Barry Davis doing work. On to the Mid-American Conference. Kent State remains the pick. They're at Ball State this weekend. Just keep an eye on that.
Ball State has to sweep them to win the conference.
Yeah. Kent State at 62 in the RPI. Not too far out of that large, but it's just not going to happen. It never happens in this league.
Right.
But they're not too far out. Missouri Valley is Indiana State. Missouri State has played well.
Yep.
But it's
and they
not
play
gonna
this
be
weekend.
enough. Yeah, they do. But it's not going to be enough to get to at large. With a currently 67 RPI and 1 in 6 top 50. They are 18-6 in the league, but it's just too little too late, I think. So 1 bid league unless the Sycamores get upset.
Hey, this entire conference has 9 top 50 RPI wins. It's wild.
Mountain West, we had
Air Force.
Yeah, so we had San Diego State last week. Air
That was
Force.
a very emphatic Air Force.
I mean, they beat, was it San Jose State and San Diego State this year?
Just this weekend, they took 2 out of 3 from San Diego State to take over first place. So, agreed. Falcons flying high. Make that change. Air Force replaces San Diego State.
Send them to LSU.
Yeah, well, that would be delightful.
let them face Skeens.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay can do some scouting for next year's team.
Yeah, there you
go. Northeast Conference. We've got Central Connecticut, of course, remains the pick. 4 games up on the Wagner Seahawks. 23-4, Central Connecticut. Ohio Valley. We've had SEMO guys for a while. SEMO has now lost 7 in a row. So I might propose making a change. You've got Little Rock, who just took a series from Tennessee Tech. Little Rock is 14-6. They're technically in first place, a half game ahead of SEMO and Morehead State. Morehead State, is there a head-to-head here? Whatever. I like Little Rock.
I like a Little Rock too.
I like how he's like, is there a head-to-head? Yeah, who cares? Just put Little Rock.
That's a lot of conviction behind that one.
Yeah. You're handicapping the conference tournament is what you're doing.
That's right. Exactly. So we'll make that change. Little Rock replaces Timo. Okay. Pac-12. We've got Stanford, Oregon State in as host, and Washington obviously in. Not even close to the bubble anymore. They've moved comfortably away from the bubble. Last week, we also had Oregon and Arizona State in. Now,
Arizona State is in danger zone central, and USC should come in.
USC would come in, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Oregon is still in for now, but they're
stumbling.
Yeah. They're kind of wobbly.
Wobbly without Jay Stoffel. They're down to 39 in the RPI with a 14-13 conference record and lost, 7 of their last 8. So keep an eye on them. They're wobbling, but they're finishing with Utah on the road. USC, as you mentioned, after winning that big series from Arizona State, sweeping it. Is it a sweep?
Yeah, they swept them.
I've got them in, not on the bubble.
Okay.
Even with the RPI, I just think they're in right now.
Yeah, 16-11 in the league with a 58 RPI. Again, we've seen Pac-12 teams in this range get in with once they hit that 16 win mark or more. They finish at Arizona. I think if they win one game at Arizona, they're safe.
Yeah.
If they get swept at Arizona, maybe it's dicey.
The tournament matters.
Yeah. But yeah, and then I think that's all here. UCLA not even on the bubble at 11-14-1. But 59 RPI. Arizona State guys now 14-12 with a 53 RPI.
1-9 in their last 10.
Ooh, and they've got UCLA at home this weekend. That's a must-win series for them. But they are sitting
both
there.
Teams really.
Yeah,
for UCLA even have a chance to get in.
Certainly, UCLA probably needs to sweep. I would think. I don't know. I mean.
I put them on the bottom team and see where we are.
Yeah, 14-12. Yeah. So if they win 2 out of 3 to get to 16-13, they're probably okay, despite that brutal stretch there. What you doing here, Kendall? Okay, whatever.
Order.
Okay, let's go to the Patriot League. Army.
Yep.
21-4 in the Patriots. Won that league by 7 games over Bucknell and Navy. The Patriot League tournament. So they're playing Bucknell, by the way, this weekend in the championship series. So there you have it. They took 2 out of 3 from Lafayette. Army actually lost the first game of the semifinal series last weekend to Lafayette, who's 15-37, but Army rallied back to sweep Sunday's doubleheader. Advance to the finals. Go to the SEC. We already have LSU, Arkansas, Florida, Vandy, South Carolina, and Kentucky. We already have 6 hosts, right? In this league.
Mm-hmm.
So then we've got Auburn, Tennessee,
Alabama,
and
then A&M would still be in. But they need to win games in Starkville.
So Georgia drops out.
Georgia's out.
So, Mark, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When you look at Georgia and Missouri, both those teams are in the 30s from an RPI standpoint. They have 10 conference wins. Alabama back in 21 got in with 12 conference wins. Mm-hmm. What was the difference there? The aggregate?
The difference was Alabama was considered the 9th team in the league in the pecking order, and this would be 11th, 12th. Gotcha. So I do think that matters when you're trying to fill out, hey, this league is really strong. We want to give them a representative number of teams where, 11 is a tougher sell. I think if you're going to get 11, it needs to not be in question.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that's it then. A&M would be kind of the last bubble team here with Georgia out. And we will move on to A&M's got what this weekend? Remind me.
They go to Mississippi State.
That's right.
So if they win 2 out of 3, you feel pretty good about their chances.
But if they don't win 2 out of 3, they get to 13.
Then
wins.
Then it's going to be they're going to sweat it out. Ideally, they win some games in Hoover. They could still get in if they don't, but they would be subject to.
They'd have to have no stolen bids.
And some of the other bubble teams would also need to lose. It'd be a rough week.
Yeah. Okay. All right, on to the SoCon. We've had Wofford struggling 3-7 in their last 10 games.
I would flip to Mercer.
Yeah, Mercer
swept Wofford.
Yep. So let's make that change. Mercer replaces Wofford in the SoCon. Okay. To the Southland. Pickles remains the pick here, 2 games ahead of Northwestern State and Incarnate Word. SWAC, we've got Alabama State 24-3 is the pick. Grambling 20-6 in the West, by the way. Summit League, Oral Roberts 20-1. 20-1. And
pretty
then,
good.
Yeah. Sunbelt, we've got Southern Miss and Coastal. Troy would be the 3rd team at 16-11 with a 35 RPI. They're still in. How about Texas State? We had them in last week.
To be on the bubble.
They're now 15-12, which is 6th place in the league. 7th place percentage points. They're behind James Madison, actually. And 46 RPI. They got swept this weekend by the Cajuns. Don't love that for them.
Yeah, Louisiana is an interesting team, just in the sense that they're 3rd in the league, but the RPI is only 66.
Yeah, I think.
And they go to Southern Miss.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can win one game and help your RPI, as we saw with Texas Tech.
Yep. If they somehow won that series, I'd probably put them in, at least going in the conference tournament.
Yeah, they'd have. There's a path.
There is a path. So we'll put them on our list of others to keep an eye on.
So one spot to cut.
Yeah, well, we're not quite finished here. Calm down.
Oh, yeah.
Guy never gives the West any respect, this guy.
Yeah.
We got the West Coast Conference, LMU, 18-6. 2.5 games ahead of San Diego. They're the pick. And then the WAC remains Sam Houston State. So those are 1-bid leagues. No change in those conferences. So yeah, So we're currently sitting at 65, and that's if you include, as Mark alluded to, this was a pretty soft bubble. That's if you include the likes of TCU, Oklahoma, Irvine, and Texas State, all of whom and A&M, all of whom are in pretty dicey situations.
Yeah. So it's, again, there's no stolen bids yet, so we don't anticipate this to be what it actually looks like. And as we talked about, there's some teams that can make some runs that aren't in today's field, that when we evaluate next week and tournament week are absolutely going to be right in the thick of this.
Yeah.
So looking at it, it's, for me, it's between Texas State and TCU, and I feel like I'm picking on Kendall here, but those would be the last 2 on the board for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would agree. I still like what Arizona State's done overall.
Mm-hmm.
I like the fact that UC Irvine is undefeated against the Pac-12. That, to me, is pretty loud. So, I would agree with that. I think A&M has done enough in terms of marquee series wins. I mean, how many teams have series win over Florida, series win over Kentucky on the road in the last month?
Mm-hmm.
So
I like that TCU has that series win against Fullerton, who's winning their league just 2 weeks ago. They have a series win against Oklahoma State. I think I lean. I mean, I'm a little skeptical still of TCU, but I think I lean them over Texas State.
Yeah. Ironically enough, they play later tonight as we record this, and Texas State did win the first meeting between the 2 teams.
Interesting.
Wow. So do we want to have our first ever Nerdcast play-in game? Right? We have a field of 65 and bracket TCU and Texas State there, and then whoever wins. I don't know.
So I will say this about TCU. Just trying to dissect resumes here. TCU has 6 wins against top 25 RPI teams, or 6-4. Texas State's 1-2.
Yeah. Now,
Where's
if
that?
to Mark's point, if Texas Tech wins tonight to sweep the season series between the two, does that change anything?
It could.
I mean,
the other thing I'll mention
close.
too is TCU non-conference strength of schedule 31, Texas State 152.
So looking ahead to next week, Texas State's got UL Monroe. You would expect them to win games there. It's at home. The RPI isn't great, but it's not really a problem. It's as good as TCU's. However, TCU goes to Kansas State. Okay, so that is certainly a more challenging road.
Yes, no, you're right.
And while they're a really good team, their RPI is not great. So I don't know that you're going to get a huge bump, like Texas Tech did going to West Virginia, even though the opposition might be fairly comparable. So if I'm playing the odds, I'm probably saying Texas State here, even though TCU I might favor them should they play a 3-game series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the problem with the Big 12 is I don't think the Big 12 is a good enough league this year to warrant 7 out of the 9 teams getting in.
That's an excellent point.
And I don't love TCU's chances on the road this weekend. They could win it. They certainly could win it.
Yeah, let's go with Texas State here as the last team in.
As a 4th Sun Belt team, even though they're like the 7th place team in their league currently. Again, to Mark's point, they'll probably take care of business against ULM. But does that hurt their RPI more?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? But it's really cool that I did a dry run of this morning, and my last 2 teams to consider were Texas State and TCU, and then that's where we ended up. So that's why when you said let's cut TCU, I'm like, whoa, don't do that yet.
Puppet master this guy.
Let's see where we land.
Keep this in mind. ULM is 16-35, number 255 on the RPI. Playing those games is going to hurt the Bobcats, even if they win, even if they sweep. You would think.
Yeah.
Let's see what we've got for.
But they move up in the standings.
Yeah, the standings is the issue right now. Not as much the RPI.
I mean, the RPI doesn't help, but I think if they move up in the standings, and the Sun Belt's going to get some good, they're going to get some favor, I think, from the committee because that's a really good league this year. When years past, maybe it didn't. So we'll see. I mean, honestly, there's not room for both of these teams, on selection day, as they're constituted today. But you got to pick one at this point.
So it looks like, looking at the math here, if Texas State wins 3 of the last 4, they finish with an RPI of 62. I don't love that, guys.
Yeah, me either.
I think
they're going to the tournament though.
Yeah, that's true. 62,
and they're going to play some pretty good teams.
Yeah,
that works both ways. You can lose, but
6-11 top 52. I don't see it. I don't see it for Texas State. I just don't. I'd almost rather make a case for Georgia Tech. You can make a case for Georgia Tech over either of these teams if you think Georgia Tech wins that Virginia series, which again,
I don't.
What about Rutgers? If we look at this,
what about the Cajuns?
The Cajuns again. Cajuns have to win that series against Southern Miss, which I let Southern Miss.
Yeah, especially this weekend with the announcement today.
Yeah,
with Coach Berry.
Actually, I did miss that announcement. What are we talking about?
Yeah, he's announced he's retiring at the end of the year.
Oh my gosh, I missed that. Yeah. Wow, that's huge. Yeah. Glad you brought that to my attention, Marcus. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Your personal news service.
That's
Aaron just leaves coaching changes to me.
Yeah, it's not my
department. Why bother?
I'm a guy who goes and hangs out in Coach Berry's office with all the deer heads on the wall, and like I'm in my own living room. I do. I always love visiting with Coach Berry. Just truly one of college baseball's great personalities. Just a true gentleman. Always hospitable. He's fantastic. Rutgers, I can't see it. Can't get there. I mean, well, can you? Rutgers. That's. I mean, we don't. I don't think any of us, feel good about TCU or Texas State. Let's talk about Rutgers.
We don't.
Rutgers 13-8. Let's say they sweep Minnesota to get to 16-8.
Problem is with Minnesota, their RPI is going to go down.
Yeah,
like it did with Maryland. Although Maryland did lose one of those games.
It is on the road.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of quality wins there.
1-6 top 50 hurts. I guess I go TCU out of this group. I don't see it for Texas State. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I just wonder if, like, for instance, let's see here.
So we would be comfortable with 7 out of 9 teams from a conference. Do you think the committee would do that?
It's happened before.
I just think the Big 12 has to be really good for the committee to do that.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it's a moot point because the bubble is going to shrink and some of these teams are going to get cut. Yeah. But if we're doing our pecking order, which is the purpose of this, our at-large ladder, basically, is what we're doing, I have TCU ahead of Texas State.
Yeah. I mean, if they played, I would probably pick them to win. And as we've seen from our picks all year, I mean, this is where it's at.
Yeah. Well, Mark, you're like 87.
I'm now going 0-10 since I finally gloated for the first time. So, yeah.
Mark I'll give you some credit, NMG. 87-43 in the picks this year. He's got a 4-game lead over Mike Rooney as we head into the final week of the regular season in our pick'em competition. So, hats off to you, NMG. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's go. I mean, let's do what you propose, Mark. Basically, let's make this a play-in game tonight. Let's go TCU now. But if Texas State wins, to go 2-0 in the head-to-head series, we flip it. So if you're listening to this, keep that in mind.
It's easy.
So, additions from last week. We've got USC is in. We've added Irvine.
Yep.
TCU, and I believe Oklahoma was not in last week, were they?
Correct.
Okay, so those are our 4 newcomers. Replacing NC State. Why do I have DBU?
Who are the 4? Oklahoma, TCU,
UTSA.
Irvine?
Thank you, yes. It's Oklahoma, Irvine, USC, and TCU. Those are our new teams.
Yeah. And then out UTSA.
UTSA, NC State.
Georgia,
and Texas State.
Okay.
Maybe.
Maybe. Texas State or TCU. So our last 4 in then would be obviously TCU. I guess if we're going from team 64 down, basically on the ladder. So TCU,
Irvine.
Or Oklahoma.
Arizona State.
Oklahoma. Arizona
Those
State.
would be my teams.
Is Oklahoma ahead of those West teams for you? They're 10-11 with they're only one thing I don't like with Oklahoma is they're only 29-22 overall, but 9-8 top 50. Yeah, they're probably ahead of those teams. I would go TCU.
They did split a 4-game series with the Pac-12 champion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a head-to-head with Irvine and Arizona State, by the way, and Irvine swept it in Tempe, 3-game set. So I would have Irvine ahead of Arizona State. So I would go TCU.
I would have Irvine as my first team. Like first team in the last 4 in.
Yeah.
61. Yeah.
Yeah.
So TCU is team 64. Arizona State is team 63. Oklahoma, team 62, and Irvine 61. Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Or Oklahoma 61.
Oklahoma would be 62.
Okay.
And Irvine 61.
All right. And then team 65 would
Texas
be State,
Georgia Tech, Rutgers, one of
Georgia
those.
Tech, Rutgers.
And then it would be like either a Louisiana or a NC State or
I kind of like Louisiana.
Xavier, yeah.
I like Louisiana here.
Okay.
Good standing in a top 5 power conference league.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the RPI Zippy.
It's good work, boys. This was a long
This
pod
was harder.
today. Yeah. 80 minutes of heaven.
Yeah.
Lot to monitor here as we head into the final week of the regular season and conference tournament weeks. As I think we teased earlier, we will do another Nerdcast on Sunday this week after most of the leagues have wrapped up their regular seasons. So heading into conference tournaments, we'll post our new field on Monday with the Nerdcast, and then we will update the field as we go throughout the week. We'll keep you covered here. You know, Marcus going to be on the case, of course. All of us every night at the end of the action, we're going to reevaluate things. So stay tuned to D1Baseball. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Are we done here?
I'm wiped out.
Let's wrap it.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it.
I'm gonna need an extra day's rest this week.
Okay.
Shoulders will tight.
Do you have a little tenderness?
Yeah.
Get this man some ice.
Flexor.
Yeah. So that's it. We'll be back on Sunday, probably to be posted on Monday for more nerdcasting. Thanks for listening. Until then, so long, everybody.